Gentlemen, please take your seats. We're starting in 1 minute. Please take your seats. Or against it. We've got a lot of work to do, and people have other committee meetings, so we're going to ask that everyone is concise so we can have a good, thorough, but reasonably quick debate. First bill that we're going to call up today is going to be Senate Bill 472, which is combating organized retail crime. And I see Mr. Hudson signing on right now. That is going to be 472, Senator Jackson. Just to let y'all get ready, and we're going to kick the meeting off in just a moment. Just give everybody a little prep time while people sign in.
Is that the back of the bus?
It is toward the back, correct. All right. Folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call this meeting of the Senate Public Safety Committee to order. I'm going to ask, without any warning, Senator Rick Williams, would you give us a word of prayer, please?
Be happy to. Thank you. Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, thank you again for another wonderful day. Thank you for the many blessings and opportunities you've bestowed upon each and every one of us. Please bless this great state of Georgia. Please watch over our men and women as they go to the border to assist Texas. Please bless the people of Israel. Watch over our men and women in blue, our men and women in harm's way. In thy name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Senate Bill 472 is combating organized retail crime. This is a very simple little cleanup bill. It only strikes a couple of areas and cleans up a little bit of confusion in the bill, as well as some grammar. And this, if you'll remember, the Senate has led. We passed a couple of bills over the years called the INFORM Act, as well as combating organized retail crime. If you all know, it is a sadly very large theft ring. Typically involves groups that are, as it says in its title, organized, whether they be criminal street gangs or other nefarious organizations. Causes our Georgia retailers an extraordinary sum of money. And I think the work we have done has begun to crack down on that. I also want to thank the Attorney General's office for the great work they have done, along with our local prosecutors and judiciary in prosecuting these folks and taking the entire enterprise down. So the bill you have before it, again, this is minor changes in the second page, and I'm going to let the industry come up and talk about that in a little more detail. And as soon as we get that sign-in sheet, if we wouldn't mind grabbing that, Brooke, and bringing it over. But I'm going to start with Mr. Brian Hudson, who is representing the Home Depot, among others.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. And I just want to start off by thanking you publicly, which I think I've done before, but sorry, I'm here on behalf of the Home Depot. I apologize. And CVS. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, publicly for your leadership on this issue. As you said, you guys, the General Assembly and the Governor has supported the INFORM Act last year, and then previously creating the felony of organized retail crime. So I just want to thank you on behalf of Home Depot and CVS, and frankly all the retailers in Georgia. It's very important, as you mentioned. I just want to touch on I also want to thank the Attorney General and his leadership, as well as the Governor, for continuing to focus on this very important issue for us. So I just want to touch on a few things, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Ever so briefly, my friend.
Yes, so the Home Depot, you know, we got a lot of questions previously about what is the industry doing, and of course, we're doing all kinds of different stuff to try to combat organized retail crime. And one thing we've done recently is we've got an open source intelligence tool that's actually tracking these different marketplaces. And that's something that we've kind of implemented in the last couple of years, and it's extremely successful as far as keeping track of exactly where the stolen merchandise is. And for us, for Home Depot, we have a lot of proprietary brands that I hope everyone of this on the committee has used at some point. If you haven't, I strongly urge you to. But unfortunately, they're a hot commodity for criminals, and so we've locked up drills, et cetera. But then now we have this intelligence source online that tracks it. And as you mentioned, this is a cleanup bill. The biggest thing on this is it is actually closing a loophole. What the bill did, what the law, the Inform Law does is it actually goes after the bad actors on online marketplaces that are going through the marketplaces all the way through from start to finish, meaning going on shopping for a Husky product or Ryobi or whatever it might be from Home Depot's standpoint, and making the transaction all the way through, meaning purchasing and paying for it on that particular marketplace. What was not accounted for is those marketplaces that you organized to meet somebody somewhere to pay for it on Venmo or cash. That's what this bill does. It closes that loophole, and we've seen, Home Depot alone has seen a skyrocketing effect since this bill went into effect of stolen merchandise move from certain marketplaces to these ones where you are doing things offline, so to speak. So that's basically what this bill does. We clearly fully support this bill, and obviously thank the chairman for your leadership on this issue. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Questions, committee members? Seeing none.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we will have Ben Cowart with Georgia Retailers. Come on down, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Ben Cowart, Vice President of Government Affairs with Georgia Retailers. And just wanted to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this very important cleanup language. As Brian explained, this really is just some cleanup language from a bill that passed a few years ago that's gone a long ways for combating organized retail crime. And this will close a loophole and just make sure that all online marketplaces are having to follow the same rules and regulations and not exempting some. But we just ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. And former Senator Chuck Clay, representing the Georgia Chiefs of Police. No stranger to this building.
I won't comment just for fear of what that might entail. Chuck Clay, I've had the honor of being here to represent the Georgia Association Chiefs of Police. Be very quick and to the point. We support it. And I would just add that back in one of my earlier careers, Mr. Chairman, as Assistant DA, I've handled RICO cases in both human trafficking, heavy equipment, multi-state theft operations. These laws are a great tool. We need to strengthen them. Appreciate these folks for bringing the bill, and please support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Okay, we've got some testimony. That's everybody who had signed up. Are there questions or comments from the committee members? Seeing none. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to pass.
A motion to pass. Senator Jackson beat you to it. Any further discussion with the committee members? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. That will move on to the Senate Rules Committee. All right, next we're going to hear, I see Chairman Jay Collins. Chairman, if you would come down and talk to us about House Bill 348. I want you to the podium so all the millions of people watching can see you.
I do wish that camera was on the other side, because this is my best side over here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure to be before your Public Safety Committee over here in the House. I bring to you House Bill 348. I'm working off LC 394155S. Is that what you have there, Mr. Chairman?
Let's see here. Hang on a minute. We're looking at, we have 570090S. I'm sorry?
Is that 348?
This is 348.
Version of it that council has?
One moment here. Let's just clarify we have the right version.
This thing has changed versions numerous
Yes.
times.
Is this the one because we need a new 0102? Okay. I believe this is
that
the
correct?
exact same version, the 01, 02
Can
were
I get a copy of
misplaced.
that?
Yes. We have an extra copy of that handy? Okay, do we have an extra copy of this, Bill? Yeah. It should be identical.
Okay.
They just had to change it because of
Okay.
of missing the 01, 02 copies.
Absolutely, and that's probably my fault, Mr. Chairman,
No, it's all
not
good.
yours. So,
good.
so let me just tell you the genesis behind this bill. When these automatic traffic enforcement safety devices were first put into code, I don't think the legislative body could see some of the circumstances that would occur in jurisdictions that implemented these. And let me start off by saying, this is a very invaluable tool for law enforcement to make sure that we protect our children, our parents in the school zones during a very vulnerable time. I'm fortunate enough to live close enough to the Capitol to where most days I get to carry my child to school. The first few years that I did that, it was just a little two-lane country highway, and traffic wasn't really an issue. But now that she's getting older, she's in middle school. That middle school is on a four-lane road where the speed limit is 60 miles an hour. And so when I come out of town and have to go drop her off, I have to cross over a four-lane road with all the traffic coming north from Carrollton to get on the I-20 to come into Atlanta. So it's a very busy time for a parent. Like most parents, you're making sure your kid has everything they need, making sure they have money for the school dance or for lunch. These automatic safety devices make sure that we're protecting our young people in the school zone. But what we've seen is there's been some municipalities and vendors out there who are blatantly abusing such a tool. And what I mean by that is they're running these cameras during the day, all throughout the day. They're not being transparent and using the flashing lights to notify a motorist and to get their attention that you're in a school zone. And we've seen some municipalities and local governments generate a tremendous amount of revenue. And, I've had so many constituents in my district who've reached out to me and asked me to please do something, not necessarily because our local governments in my district are abusing these, but they have gone through jurisdictions and received speeding fines at night, on the weekend. And so I felt compelled to do something. And so we made some changes to this code section where this is concerned. And I just want to walk you through some of the changes. And Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate it if I miss anything, given the fact that this bill has metamorphosized and changed numerous times. If you have anything you want to point out, I would certainly take any constructive criticism that you or the committee may have. So if you turn through section 3, just talks about just some cleanup language there to meet some of the legislative council's approval there. We're striking streets and roads to say highways. Let's see, on page 4, section 4, it talks about when these cameras can be used as far as where the lights are concerned. It requires, down at the bottom you'll see, shall include lights that flash yellow during the time when the automatic traffic enforcement device is authorized to issue citations. That was a change there, so we're making sure and codify that if local jurisdictions are using these cameras, they have to be transparent. The lights have to be flashing to warn people that they're approaching that. Also, school zones properly marked with warning signs while the reduction of speed limit for school zone is in effect. That's on page 5 when the device is being used. So, law enforcement can do that without having to have those lights flashing there. If they so choose, if law enforcement is present. If you go on down through there, you'll see in section on page 7, it talks about if there's unauthorized use of these automatic devices, that upon the conclusion of an investigation, the Department of Public Safety can fine the jurisdiction $1,000 if they are found, using these devices in an unauthorized manner. down at the bottom of page 7, section 7, you will see that we have clawed back the appropriate times and permissible times that these devices can be utilized in those school zones. 60 minutes prior to and 30 minutes after the school's official starting time. So we're giving an hour for parents, buses, teachers to come in, and then we're giving 30 minutes after the tardy bell rings for those folks who may run a little bit late. And if a bus, where I live, the railroad track, there's crossings that are blocked, and from time to time, you do have late arrivals there. So we're being considerate and thoughtful there. And then in the afternoon, 60 minutes after the 30 minutes prior to the dismissal bell, and 60 minutes after the dismissal bell at the end of the day. Let's see. We're also changing the permitting process. The governing body of the county or municipality, that means the sheriff's office, the police department, they'll be the one that will approve the permitting process. We're taking the school system out of it, and I think that's a very good measure. Public safety belongs in the hands of public safety, not necessarily the school system. And on another note, in these jurisdictions where people are complaining about these cameras, you won't be able to pass the buck. If you go to the school board, they won't be able to tell you, oh, you've got to go to the county sheriff or the police chief to complain. The buck will stop with law enforcement there. So I think that that is a good cleanup of this piece of legislation. Then, if you'll go on through to, let's see, page... If you'll go on through to page 13, we've also taken some steps to take some of the revenue out of this for some of these vendors. They cannot charge or they cannot receive a portion of the percentage of the civil monetary penalties. They can charge the municipality or governing body for the equipment, IT, but they will no longer be able to take a percentage of what is issued through a civil monetary penalty. So we're taking out their ability to capitalize with revenue limits on there. Also, one other provision that we added to that was the 35% rule. Whereas these civil monetary penalties will fall into place with the governing authority not being able to equal to or greater of 35% of municipal or county law enforcement agencies' budget. We did do a carve-out there for what I would call a super speeder violator. Anything over 20 miles an hour over, that would not count toward that 35%. That is on page 7, I'm sorry, halfway up the page there. And, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much the bill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for the hard work that you and I have done on this bill, as well as we did get feedback from key stakeholders. In fact, I was very proud that some of the folks that both manufacture and put this technology up agreed that they shouldn't be taking a portion of that revenue, that it should be something that is purchased outright to keep everyone clean. And I do want to just mention one thing for the committee members. We passed this bill out of this committee last year, and it's probably 90% the same, and I want to just make sure you understand the changes. One of the things we did in Section 1, though, is rather than have the 1,000-foot boundary, it's defined as what we already have in local ordinance as a school zone, right? Because it depends on where a school is. We want to make sure it's consistent. We don't want to arbitrarily pick that when it's either too short or too long. We want it to just conform wherever the actual school zone is to keep it consistent. And I think if you click through again, most of this stuff is similar. Some of it is basic cleanup language. Some of it is making sure we have parity within it. And I know last year the bill had 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. I thought that we needed to extend that to 60 minutes and 30 minutes, as Chairman Collins mentioned, and then again reversing that in the afternoon to give that extra amount of time. So with that in mind, first, let's see if there are questions from the committee members for the bill's author.
One more thing I do want to point out, Mr. Chairman, if you will, and I can't find it right here. I'm looking. We did change a section in here that requires that these civil monetary penalties look more like a violation that you would receive from a peace officer in terms of you have a court date generated. That is in here, and I'm going to try to find that.
I believe those start on page 11 and continue from there.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, so on line 232, and one of the reasons behind that is, ladies and gentlemen, we would have people that were getting these civil monetary penalties, and they were having to do a lot of research to see what venue they had to go to in order to, contest this civil monetary penalty. So this makes it more like a citation that you would receive from a peace officer if you were to get a violation on the side of the road. Just makes it easier, more transparent for the due process. That's one thing I wanted to point out there.
Certainly. I think you had a question from Senator Robertson. Is that correct? Yes,
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Go right ahead.
Chairman, I noticed on the times, is it pickup that's 30 minutes prior to and 60 minutes after? Is that the afternoon?
Yes, 60 minutes prior to and 30 minutes after the starting time.
Yeah.
And then 30 minutes prior to the dismissal bell and 60 minutes after.
Harris County schools are very popular schools, very high performing, a lot of competition to get into the schools.
Sure.
And when I go by the schools in the afternoon, probably an hour and 15 minutes before school's out, I've already got parents lined up in cars all up and down 315 waiting to get their children out of school. So these cameras will be functioning 30 minutes, but they won't be functioning when they're coming up to the school prior to get into line and stuff like that. Is that correct?
That's correct. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a couple of schools that are in downtown Villa Rica, and I think they've even had to put up signage that you can't park here because there seems to be a race between parents to see who can be first to pick up little Johnny and little Sarah from school. So
Well, and I understand that, and that's the price of a successful school system, and even though it's an issue and our sheriff's office handles it, that's the price we pay. Who is responsible for, or if you know, who is responsible for putting up the flashing signs when school zones are initially established?
I believe that it's either the school system
Is it
or
DOT?
DOT actually directs those, I
Yeah.
believe.
Is every school system in Georgia, school zone in Georgia, required to have the flashing lights?
You're going to have to,
And I think so, but under here it would be, correct?
if you're going to use these cameras, that's correct.
Right, so anybody that wanted to use the cameras, if they applied, they would need to apply to, I guess, it would seem logical, the Department of Transportation,
That's correct.
to have the flashing lights installed.
That's correct.
Yeah, and
And keep in mind now, if they want to just put up signs for a school zone and then use their officers to enforce that, they can do that. Don't have to have signs. Flashing lights, excuse me.
yeah, and there are some studies done that over signage causes more confusion with drivers, especially now with cell phones, than one or two speed limit signs. Now, on page 13, any agreement entered in between, so hear what you're saying. We anticipate anybody that wants to use this, and I want to be perfectly clear, technology and law enforcement, with our inability to recruit, it is the future if we choose to have safe streets.
Absolutely.
Somebody very close to me got one of these tickets going through there, and she paid it because she was driving too fast. And I get a lot of calls from people not only driving through school zones, but people who are driving other places and get citations, and they say, "Hey, Randy, I got a ticket. What's the best thing to do?" And I tell them, pay it. because we can't change the rules for people running up and down the road every time they give us a call. But, so in here, I have a school district in Harris County again, it's in Hamilton. They use one of these, and the chief dismisses quite a bit of these when individuals call and say, it wasn't me, it was my teenager and all this other kind of stuff, and he makes those decisions.
Right.
Whether people agree with him or not agree with him, I happen to agree that he should be able to make those decisions. But, so if this passes, then, and I don't know the vendor they use, then the taxpayers of Hamilton, they go and purchase a system, and then they pay, I guess, a maintenance fee or something, as if it's software or something else. And then the fees that come in, the civil fees, go into the general fund. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so, has anybody taken a deep dive and saw what these systems cost? Because I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do know that it was those folks that said it's a good idea not to share revenue and take that out of the mix. So they must know more than we do if that's their business model.
Who said that? I'm sorry?
No.
No, I mean, you said, vendors said that?
vendors.
Yes.
That was my understanding
Yeah,
as well.
that was my question is, so the vendor thinks they could make more money off this, and of course, if the system goes down, then their maintenance people would come out and take care of it, and that would be a part
I think it's not
of
so
it.
much more money. I think it's consistent, and then nobody seems like they're trying to, quote, game the system. It's a flat
Right.
rate. This is what it costs. If you want to purchase it from them, you make an investment in purchase, right? Because you're going to have less traffic enforcement there. And I think it's a decision that the local government authority would make.
Yeah, and I would just say, to put it in simple terms, they're going to help local government bake the cake, and we don't mind them licking the spoon, but we don't want them to take all the cake with them.
Right, and I'll tell you, the timidness I have around this, and Chairman Collins, you and I have worked on similar legislation like this before, is that I've heard several different committees of individuals talking about, well, I got a ticket, or somebody else got a ticket, and all this other stuff, getting tickets, and I appreciate that. But if you get a citation for violating Georgia law, you have earned a citation for violating Georgia law.
Absolutely.
What we cannot do is go out and change the rules every time the wrong person gets a ticket.
Absolutely.
And it's frustrating. I just saw this earlier today, and I shared it with the chairman. I appreciate the work y'all have done. I'm just not sure that this is the right product at this time, but that's all the questions I have for right now.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to tell you this. I mean, obviously, to me, being the chairman of public safety, protecting school zones is the number one, goal that we should have here. Is protecting our children during that time. But it's about transparency, and we've got so many jurisdictions that are utilizing these.
Then, is there evidence of that? Is there a report that will show what school zones have shown it? Because I believe I can go, and I know Chairman Albers knows more about this than I do. I'm sure there's a place I can go and see every law enforcement agency in the state of Georgia that's had their radar certification pulled back because they've exceeded the 35%. And we have challenged speed traps.
Sure.
And tried to make everybody adhere to the, and personally, I think 35 is too high. I think we need to bring it down, but that's not this bill.
No.
But my concern is sometimes, and I want school zones to be safe. I have a 5-year-old daughter that's in school. I'd love for the cameras or whatever devices are there to run from the time she gets to school to the time she gets out, to keep kids getting on and off buses, field trips, all this other kind of stuff. And if citizens can't adjust their schedule to those times, then find another way to go where you're going. But I appreciate your work on this. Thank you very
You
much.
say you had a daughter or a granddaughter?
A daughter.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
All right, we're going to move on.
My 4 granddaughters are older than my daughter.
A good catch, and I'm going to turn it over to Senator Jackson for a moment, but I think something we need to make sure we're clear upon is if somebody does make a school zone from now 7 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, that means that road, which is rated, let's say, for 45 miles an hour, is going to go down to 30, 35, 25, whatever the speed limit zone is, for the entire day now.
That's right.
Right? Which, now, there's a reason why DOT puts different mileage that you can, how fast you can go on those roads to begin with. And when we had folks that arbitrarily, they changed the speed limit on their own, and created hours that did not exist for school zones, and then cited people for those. That doesn't work either, right? So as we work through this process, we're going to try and be very thoughtful and come together. But we have to make sure that we're finding balance in these things as well. So let's let Senator Jackson take a question. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. The first one is about who owns the machines, which, is it the county or is it the law enforcement agency within the county or the city? I can't figure out here.
Right now, it takes the school system and then the local jurisdiction to sign off on the permit. And
Right.
ultimately, I would say that it's the local jurisdiction of law enforcement that has the agreement, and the school system has to sign off on it.
But that is going to change in
So,
this bill.
in this
That'll
bill,
change
what
in
would
this
it be?
bill, yes.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
The
what's
school
answer?
system in this bill will
Is
no
out.
longer be in that. And that's very intentional if you think about it, because the school system does not control traffic.
No, I understand that part. So is it the county now that will own the system, or is it the law enforcement agency that will own it?
Well, it could be a county or a city, depending on where the
Well,
school is,
right, I should
but their funds are going to go back to whatever their governing authority is,
Right.
and it's however the local PD has set up their ability to take dollars in, whether it be a sheriff or a police department.
I guess maybe I should ask the question more clearly. Is the local law enforcement agency, will the dollars be designated specifically for law enforcement for that agency, or can it go to the general fund, broadly speaking, to fund all types of county or city needs, or is it only going to law enforcement?
It'll go back to the general fund, and hopefully
Where
local.
does that say that though? How do I, can you help me see that in the bill? That's where I'm trying to discern.
And, well, Mr. Chairman, you want to help me with that? I think that it's going to go back to your local law enforcement, and that's going to be up to, that'll be up to your local governing authority.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Wouldn't that be based on the contract that's entered in by whether it's the county or the
That'll be-
municipal police department?
Those details will be determined by that contract with that vendor.
Because today, traditionally, if a law enforcement agency writes a citation and funds come in from that citation, they go into the general fund
That's right.
of the city to be dispersed. And the same thing with the county sheriff's office.
Right.
It would go into the county coffers to be dispersed for everything from sewage to roads, public safety and all.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then my second question is, this really intentionally includes universities and colleges as being able to have roads that are controlled by these cameras.
Yes.
How, when it comes to determining the times that the cameras can be on, how would a university or a college determine that, given that they could have a class that starts at 7 a.m. in the morning, they could have a class that starts at 9 p.m. in the in the evening. So what would be the restrictions, or how do we make sure that universities can use these without having their cameras operated all day long?
Well, I mean, under the way that the current bill is written, as long as they were having classes, they're able to do that.
Is that the intention of your bill, sir?
That, as far as I'm concerned, and the institutional knowledge that I have about this issue, we have not seen, or I have not seen, and maybe Chairman Alberts can correct me, but colleges and universities have not overwhelmingly been involved in this program at all.
I'm not aware of anybody using it currently, Senator, but I'm sure there's somebody out there.
Yeah, I mean, we make the provision for them to be able to do so.
And that's not necessarily new, right?
Right, and so
And
but I think as we're thinking about confining the hours of instruction time, and I hear your concern about lowering the speed limit all day long, to be clear, if I ran a university system, I'd put a camera up and run it all day long. There's a real incentive to do that, right, at this point, because your instructional times are so broad.
Well,
so you could slow down the traffic on your street all day long.
I think you're bringing up a valid point. I think that if there is a life safety concern, anybody can petition the Department of Transportation, if it's a state road or their local DOT, and have the speed limit changed for the entire time. If they think that's a problem and they need to get it down to 25 miles an hour all the time, they can do that. They don't need a flashing red light. They don't need a camera. They don't need anything. They can just lower the speed limit.
And Senator, as the author of the bill, I will be open to any suggestions that this committee has to make this bill better. So, if that's something you want to offer as an amendment, the author of this bill would be more than happy to take that.
I think you're bringing up a valid point, Senator Jackson, but again, I think that we should make sure that's clearly communicated. And I know our locals do those things. I mean, we changed in my hometown of Roswell speed limits in downtown areas where people are literally using golf carts now, much to my chagrin sometimes without seatbelts, but that's another conversation and another bill. All right, other questions from the committee members? Okay, so thank you, Chairman Collins. We've got a couple people going to come talk real quick, and I'm going to give them a chance, please, if you just make yourself at home. We've got Ms. Holly Miller, a parent, here to talk to us. Come on down.
To Mr. Chairman and all the other committee members, my name is Holly Miller, and I appreciate the committee giving me an opportunity to speak. I live here in Atlanta. I am speaking today not only as a mother, but as a supporter of Give School Kids a Break. Give School Kids a Break's mission is to create awareness and advocate for policies that enhance the safety of school zones throughout the state of Georgia. We believe that every child should be able to walk or ride their bike to and from school without fear, and that every parent should feel confident about their child's safety during drop-off, pick-up, and during the entire day. We are firm believers that the automated speed camera program has been an effective tool used by local communities to help address a huge problem that exists at many schools. Whether it is excessive speeding in front of our schools, be it before, during, or immediately after the school day. The AJC reported just last week that 41,700 tickets for excessive speeds were issued in Atlanta in the first 3 months of schools adopting the cameras. 41,700, that's a lot of speeding. That indicates that there is a lot of danger and a sure sign that school zone speeding is more than a problem. It's an epidemic. If you allow me to be blunt, these cameras save lives. They are highly effective at reducing vehicle speeds in school zones, and they exist only in communities that have decided they are desperately needed. Over the past 10 years, there has been a nationwide spike in pedestrian fatalities due to a combination of speeding and distracted driving. Communities are turning to automated enforcement as a means of encouraging drivers to follow speed limits and pay attention. Automatic enforcement is one tool now being used by many cities and counties in Georgia, and one that we strongly believe should not be curtailed by a new state law that would tell these local communities that you believe that speeding is only a problem for their schools in the mornings and afternoons. It's not. Speeding in school zones while children are present is dangerous at any time. As you are aware, according to current Georgia law, paid citation revenue must be utilized for law enforcement activities that have made our communities safer, such as police equipment and new school resource officers. We strongly support that language. Any attempt to weaken this successful program is both irresponsible and dangerous. Make no mistake about it, this program has made our school zones safer, and it has possibly saved lives. Studies have shown that the
I
benefits...
need to ask you to wrap up. I'm sorry. We got to give other
Okay,
people a
I'm
chance.
almost at the end.
Thank you.
Okay. Studies have shown that the benefits of slowing down is twofold. Number one, morally, it's the right thing to do. And secondly, it's for the safety of our children. And since I'm going to cut it short, I'll
Thank
go
you
to the
so
end.
much. I appreciate your testimony today.
Yes.
Very passionate.
Okay.
All right. Next.
Um,
Go
If
ahead.
that's good enough?
Oh, I think that, yeah.
Did
I'm
I
sorry.
get
We
my
just-
point across?
Loud and clear. We appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
All right, Bob Dallas, come on down. Bob, we're going to keep this short, please. We've got several bills on the calendar, and we don't want people to lose their opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. And I'm sorry, I need to give one of these to you. My name is Bob Dallas. I served as the Director of the Georgia Governor's Office of Highway Safety from 2003 to 2011 during the Purdue administration, and I've been very active in highway safety since that time, working with a lot of folks. And I represent Blue Line Solutions, one of the vendors here. I can answer some of the questions that were raised in terms of the specificity of what the law says and how the processes work. Let me just first say that this bill does have necessary components to fix the 600-foot issue, to address the 1,000-foot school zone issue, as well as a 6% grade, and the question of law enforcement only approving this as opposed to including the schools is probably the right thing to do, as was stated earlier, so that we know who's in charge of the program. But the biggest issue that this bill raises is the question of the morning and afternoon, that's fine, but not enforcement during the center time. Let me just say that in most school zones, the morning and afternoon is when the speed limits are lowered. In the middle time, the speed limit goes back to what it was before. And that's a very important thing. So I think that's pretty much universal in that. And when we look at what I've handed out to you, and I think it's important to note that the first thing that you have on your handout is from the Georgia Governor's Office of Highway Safety working in conjunction with GDOT, and that is the Georgia Traffic Safety Facts, and that's this document right here. If you'll turn to the second page, as was reiterated earlier, pedestrian crash deaths in Georgia have been spiking. And this is part of the solution to that. But the second thing I wanted you to look at is very clear data from Blue Line that shows all of our installations in Georgia and the reduction in excessive speeds. And what I mean by that is over 10 miles an hour have gone in the 90 percentile for most locations. So what you have is that people used to speed based on speed studies without any enforcement. It dropped by 90%. So what we see is a huge increase in safety by putting these programs in. And then the final
Okay, Bob,
document.
we're gonna have to wrap this up.
Okay. Well, the issue of how this is done. When we put these programs in, we do a 5-day study to determine if there's a problem. We work with the local jurisdiction to communicate it to the community where these things should go, not everywhere. And then we go through a process of giving out warning tickets for the first 30 days, and then the administrative tickets go out. Well, that results in a 90% reduction. So you're getting compliance and making this a much safer school zone. And I will say this, when you ask the question, what should be added to the information that's provided to the driver, I would submit to you that you probably should include during school hours so that they know it's in a between time. And furthermore, I would include flashing lights, because in Georgia, you're not required to have flashing lights in order to have a school zone. The law does not provide for that. So if you want flashing lights, that will inform the driver of this, because our goal is compliance, not generating revenue. And I will note this, that the administrative side of keeping this program going is extensive. The back office work to make this thing work properly for the citizen is extensive and expensive. So the question of how the revenue is divided between the jurisdiction and the vendor, the way it is now is fairly negotiated, and typically it's 35, 65%, 65% going to the jurisdiction, and the 35% going to the vendor in order to make this thing work. Because it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of mailing in order to get it exactly right. And I submit to you that any vendor or jurisdiction that does not follow the rules, they should be held to account. And that's a right thing to do. And I will say this about universities and colleges. Today, they're not allowed. However, the only universities and colleges that could allow to have speed enforcement, automated speed enforcement, are those who have a radar permit. It's a handful in the state of Georgia. They would not be able to enforce the speed limits with automated speed enforcement on roads that belong to the state or the local jurisdiction that aren't in their curtilage. So it's a very narrow number of locations for that. So I'm glad to answer any questions in terms of the technical side of this or any other aspects of this.
All right. I don't believe so. All right. Very quick if we
Yeah.
could. We've got,
Bob, to be clear on the university thing, and I know Senator Jones may be aware of this too, don't we allow a certain distance beyond the curtilage on universities for law enforcement that is sworn by the university that they can police?
It's the current law that allows a university law enforcement or college law enforcement
Yes,
to
sir.
enforce speed limits with automated devices like radar or LiDAR.
Right,
That's where you can do this.
right.
That's the limitation. So what the current law is where you could do this. So if that university or college is able to take a road next to it and enforce the speed limit, even though it may be owned by the state,
Right.
then the answer would be yes. If it's
Okay.
not, then the answer would be no, it cannot. It can only do the interior if it has a radar permit.
all right. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, Jay, why don't you come on back down? That's everybody who signed up on our sign-in sheet. So, in listening to committee members, the one theme that I'm hearing is a concern about the times. I want to talk about anything else in the bill prior to the times for a moment. Are there any concerns aside from that? Senator Jackson, what are your concerns?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at lines 147 through 153 as it relates to if somebody violates this provision. So there's a $1,000 fine. I understand that piece, but then it says that they shall be subject to the revocation of all of their speed detection devices in that entire jurisdiction. How long? Like, how long can they never ever have cameras again, forever and ever? Amen. Or, for the entire jurisdiction, what happens if there's a blip? Let's say it's Monday is a school holiday, and they forget to turn the cameras off, and so they issue some inappropriately. They get fined $1,000. I get that, but do they never get another bite at the apple?
Senator, I think we may want to strike that shall and say may there. Give that discretion to the commissioner.
Yep, I think that makes sense. That's a fair catch. All right.
And I think the question around all of them in the entire jurisdiction feels heavy-handed to me.
Sure.
Why don't we say may and may? So may on line 151 and may again on line 52.
Yeah, I mean, I have full confidence in the commissioner. He can look at this objectively and put that in his hands. I'm all for grace and mercy.
Amen. Does that make sense, Senator, on line 152? And I'm sorry, 151 and then below 152.
I don't have a problem with the $1,000 fine. They may be subject to the revocation of.
Okay, so you want to just
I don't want
change.
the word all there.
How about we do this? Why don't we just say that on line 152, we are going to change shall to may, and then subject to revocation of,
Speed detection.
right, and strike the word all. Does that make more sense?
My concern is if we say all, some of these jurisdictions, the cameras would just be a single component of their speed detection devices.
That's right.
Because all these agencies have to be certified to run radar in their moving vehicles and on their motors also. So in reading that, whether we take all out or leave all in, it would impact every device within the agency that the Department of Public Safety has permitted them to use, would be
That-
my concern.
And that would be unfortunate. I agree. I agree.
All right, why don't we just say this? Revocation of automated speed detection device permits.
May
Would
be
that
subject
sound,
to
make
the
everybody
revocation.
agreeable on that? Then in this case, I believe Senator Robertson, that addresses your concern of not everything, and it wouldn't be isolated to more than one. I think that's a very reasonable request. Okay? All right, other items not related to the times.
It's not even being addressed.
I'll give everybody another minute, and then we will discuss the times.
Okay, and just so I understand, because again, I've never been involved in RFPs on any of this kind of technology, what is a subscription basis? Is that, I mean,
Says, yeah, subscription basis means they're basically, rather than buying the equipment outright, they're in fact almost leasing it, but they never own the equipment, right? It's what you do with software today. You pay like a monthly charge to have it, but it's never truly yours to keep. All right. Anybody else have a question, comment, or concern prior to the times?
Mr. Chairman, one thing I want to point out, if you'll allow me to.
Please.
With regards to the times. I have a school in my district where the campus is bifurcated by a road, intersected by a road. And you have part of the campus on one side and on the other. This will allow those campuses throughout the state to be able to run those cameras all during the day because you have students traveling back and forth.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So now we're back to the discussion about the times. So let's have a quick comprehensive discussion about this. I think there's two schools of thought, right? The one school of thought is if the school day starts at 7:50, the cameras ought to go on at 6 a.m. and ought to run till 7 p.m. The other school of thought is there ought to be a window there because there is a main time where kids and adults and teachers are getting to school and out, and traffic flow for the rest of the day should be separate. The way I view this is school zones have been around forever, right? And school zones are typically marked. School times from this time to this time. And most people, I believe, are used to that time, and they know what school is happening then. The crossing guard might be out there. There might be somebody, could have been a law enforcement officer shooting radar. They could now even have cameras. But if it's noon, I don't think the average public even understands because they have been programmed, and I think we've taught them for decades and decades that there are school times, beginning and end. Now, I think we should be open to a conversation if there's concern from everybody of maybe it needs to be a little bit longer. Maybe we're concerned about a sports event, something going on afterwards, et cetera. So I think we should have a thoughtful conversation, and hopefully we can come up with something that makes sense as a compromise. Got a question or a comment from Senator Halpern, you're number 10, I think.
I think
Okay.
more a comment. I mean, for me, if I think about different even ages of kids, so doesn't matter if it's elementary, middle, high school, different things can happen with different groups of kids. What I like about this bill is that you have in here the flashing yellow light, which actually reminds people that they are going through a school zone. For me, I would personally rather see a longer time frame. I'm of your, was that the first or your second school of thought? But I'm at the school of thought that says if you're passing through a school zone, it's better for you to slow down. I almost don't care what time of day. Certainly when school's operational, right? And that operational is more than just drop off in the morning and pick up at night. Because you've got after-school activities, you've got a whole bunch of stuff that actually really is happening out of school hours, still on the campus. And I think too about kind of some of the schools my kids have been in that are school zones, but all day long, like my kids went to a school that had a park across the street. And they would use that park across the street as an extension of the classroom all day. Any particular day. It wasn't just on Fridays. And so I am of the school of thought that I would rather have people be reminded constantly that this is a school zone with the flashing lights for a longer period of time and have them slow down because you just don't know and because it can save lives. Obviously not at 10 o'clock at night, right? But a longer period of time in the day.
I definitely hear your perspective. I think we also, though, need to think about having the Department of Transportation do traffic studies then, because they are not geared to be that amount of a speed limit all day long, Monday through Friday, right? They set the speed limits on those roads based on what they thought was needed for the size, the scope, the egress, the different highways that are associated. There's a whole litany of things that the Department of Transportation uses to set a speed limit. What we would be doing in this case is kind of superseding that to some degree, saying that we're going to do that, which if we're going to do from beginning to end of school, would probably be somewhere between a 10 and 12-hour time in pretty much most of the time people are on the roads Monday through Friday. I think that's a pretty significant jump from where we are today. I will tell you, there's a school right outside the back of my neighborhood that has cameras, and they're 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. I think the language that Chairman Collins has put forth here actually is longer than what some people have today, but it's also a major thoroughfare. It's Alpharetta Highway. It's Highway 9, right? But, you know, that's a 4-lane highway all day long that we would take from 45 miles an hour down to 25. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense going forward. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm beginning to live in your world here, but I do wonder, so my concern would be, and I don't know if that software exists or if it's even possible, I do think that super speeders who are going through any time of day in front of those schools when the schools are in operation, I think that we should be able to have a way of ticketing them. And so I mean, this is for the software folks, but if we could imagine a world in which, you know, for the hour before and after school, you can only go 25 miles an hour, but that during the school day, during instruction time, super speeders get fined properly. That to me feels like a reasonable thing, right? Because we don't want people running 55 miles an hour in front of a school during school day hours.
Well, you know, and I think that gets back to what is the speed limit? Because if the speed limit is 45 at noon, is 55 a super speeder? Probably not, right?
Well,
but this doesn't.
we have a defined super speeder law, right?
Correct,
But-
and I think that Chairman Collins actually mentioned that these folks, there's a total amount of revenue that can be collected based on the budget for public safety, right? And that doesn't get capped at all for super speeders, right? We can get as many as we want. Here's the good news. Since we passed the super speeder law in Georgia, the rate of super speeders went down precipitously. We did have a spike right after COVID, I think, because people all of a sudden could drive on the interstates like they never drove before. But I guess the traffic has slowed them back down again after the last statistics that I saw. But let's again continue this conversation, because I think we need to come up to a good logical conclusion here, because I think everybody's bringing about the right thought process here, right? Our concern is about the safety of kids. I think we also have to remember of why the speed limits were set that way, why the roads were there, why they chose to put those schools in those places to begin with, et cetera. And what I don't want us to do is, an error side of caution, have unintended consequences as well. So I think perhaps we talked about the timing need to be a little bit more. So let's talk about what makes everybody comfortable.
Well, my concern is, and I don't know the software that well. You know, there are programs at my 5-year-old daughter's school that that my wife and I and family go to, and the parking lots fill up, you know, really fast. There's a lot of people there, and I was driving through Muskogee County. I think I shared it with the chairman a few months back, and I was driving near Clubview Elementary down in Columbus, and the flashing lights were on. So I called the superintendent and said, you know, school's not in today. What's going on? And he said somebody forgot to turn off the computer or just software. So is the technology at the level to where if a school was having a graduation at 2 in the afternoon, where these devices and the flashing signs and all, the software could be adjusted so that day they could be done? And I understand the DOT speed studies. I've asked for them on curves and other roads in my district, and worked with DOT on that. And the chairman's right. And then I think later when schools and other things come in there, they adjust them. But the type of school day that a lot of us on this committee went to is not the school day today. Schools are all day long activities, and so my concern is the software. And if you'll allow me to jump on a small lily pad really quick, thinking about the subscription thing and looking at these numbers of the drops, if they go in first year and let's say the company tells them it's $100,000 or whatever to lease the equipment and the software for the first year, and their numbers, they get the revenue from that going into the general fund the first year, and then the second year of their contract, they're still paying the subscription fee, but their ticket numbers drop 95%. So the citizens, we have to be sure that the citizens are willing to pay an inflated amount for much lower revenue in the second years and previous years based on these numbers here that I'm looking at on this True Blue document.
But I think you bring up a good point there, Senator, and I think if you would consider if they were going to expand their sheriff's office or their local police department, they would make an investment because they thought they needed to do more traffic slowdowns and suppression, and they would then hire someone to do that. Now, they might bring it down, but that person's still going to work there the year after and the year after, so I think that's going to be a decision they would have to make. I do have one more serious question, though. When you were in school, did they have the cameras set up for the horses and buggies, or is that a different?
Wow. Wow.
Well, when I was in school, the cameras were set up higher because we all drove big pickup trucks, so.
One thing,
With lift kits and.
one thought I would like to leave with this committee here today is the fact that it was my intention and the intentions of those that I have spoken with is we make this uniform throughout this state. Whether you're in Savannah, Sylvester, Villa Rica, or Vidalia, that when school cameras and these civil monetary penalties and these automatic traffic devices, they're the same throughout this state. And I think if you go allowing, one jurisdiction to turn them on here and there, I think you defeat the purpose of continuity, and that's just a thought from me.
I think uniform rules of the road is what you're
Right.
saying, and
Absolutely.
I think that is probably very consistent, so.
Work needs to be done.
So I think we're down to, we've got a very easy set of amendments we're all agreed to. We're talking about the time frame right now. I think based on what we're saying, that there's a comfort level that there should be more time than what is outlined in the bill currently. I think I see nodding heads in that case. Some may think otherwise, but there's probably more nodding heads than not. So why don't we look at 60 minutes before, 60 minutes after in the morning, and then 60 minutes before and 90 minutes after for after-school activities? Would that give everybody a comfort level that we're making progress? That would be more than most people have today. And by the way, it's their option. They can do it less. They can not do it at all. But I think that's fair, because I think if we start getting down to each individual activity, I could argue that my park should always have a flashing light. Or every time that the Cultural Arts Center has a performance that's geared toward kids, they ought to have a flashing light. And there's 1,000 people that go there. So I think that we could get to the what end part of that. I think that's a fair and reasonable compromise. Looking for feedback from the committee members.
90 minutes after school. It does not.
The times currently are on page 8, starting at the very top.
I'm sorry, can I just have a clarifying question?
Yes.
So currently today, right now, a school could turn their cameras on for a football game and their flashing lights, is that correct?
Right now, there are no parameters around that. That's the biggest part of the challenge we have today, because there are concerns, and there has been, we've gotten people who have been cited at 10 o'clock at night and Saturday afternoons when there was no school going on. But also, again, people are getting ticketed today, and some of these are very legitimate. They're on that 45-mile-an-hour highway, like I told you, right? And they thought it's 45 miles an hour because school's in the morning and the afternoon, right? Now, they were going 45. They thought they were going the speed limit, but they got a ticket, right? So I think that's where therein lies rub. Again, I want to be real cautious to everybody to know there's a process. If there is a road that needs to be slowed down, to work with your local or the state DOT to slow the entire road down to a lower amount.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Right, I understand that, but I do think that as it's currently set up, a school system is able to determine for themselves the more precious times. And so I would want us to be able to maintain some flexibility, not so people can be fined at midnight. Like, we don't want that. But I do want football games. I do want those flashing lights on for football games. I do want those flashing lights on for graduations or, events that might actually happen on a Saturday. I think that it's important to our schools and our school zones to be able to have some flexibility around that, not to ticket people, but to slow people down. Because the reality is schools don't just function, from 8 to 3. They do have these special times. And I'd hate to handcuff them or prevent them from being able to moderate traffic during those special times.
And I hear your point, Senator. Here's my concern. There will always be a reason, and if one person goes to the school, the cameras will never go off ever again. That's my concern. And we do have some that are taking advantage of that, some that are not. Some, I think, are being a little more responsible. Some are using it as a revenue generation source right now. We've seen that. But I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to say, well, somebody went to the central office today. They drove in the school, so we should have it on, right? It's the to what end conversation we're going to have on that.
And to,
go ahead.
yeah, if I can, to that point, we have the 35% number in there, which again, I think is too high. And we also have a checks and balance system in here if somebody is abusing the equipment. My concern is, I think a lot of these late night citations, Saturday citations, I think a lot of those are more anomalies than consistent behavior, because I'm telling you, I get a lot of calls, and I've yet to get a call on speed cameras, and I've got one 5 miles down the road from my house. And so I'm wondering if we're, with the protections we already have there, if we can protect from those that are going to abuse it, because everybody on this committee, and especially the chairman I know, knows I despise revenue-based policing. I think that's terrible. But I think allowing some flexibility, especially with the way some sporting events have deteriorated here of late, and with some other things. But again, I think it's for a longer conversation, because I agree with Chairman Collins that we certainly don't need a patchwork of policies all over the state of Georgia. So I still have concern on both sides of that. And again, I still have the concern of somebody investing a great deal of money, and I don't think we can compare technology to human resources. There's just a lesser cost in technology.
Okay. We're going to have to wrap this conversation up. Senator Payne.
Well, I just question, there's been several talk about flashing lights. Is that requirement for school zones? I mean, for this, when there's,
Yes.
If they have
Yes,
cameras.
the flashing lights will be required.
where's that
If they
at?
have cameras.
It's back toward the front of the bill. But it does
Page four,
require, and it's
page four.
standardized throughout the state. Again, getting back to a standard that I think Chairman Collins has been talking about the whole time, so.
Because right now, under code, they do not have to flash the lights if they're using the automated device.
All right, real quick, because we got to round this up.
Well, I sense there's a great unreadiness amongst the committee, and so if you're willing, I'd like to make a motion to table, if you're willing to entertain motions.
I don't even think we need to table it. I think we're just going to wait and not take action on it right now, but I'm going to take action on this bill at our next committee meeting. We are going to take a vote on it. So I'm going to ask the committee members to work diligently with Chairman Collins. I think we're down to the very, very nitty-gritty. I'm going to ask everybody to compromise and give a little, so we don't get to what I call nanny state. And at the same point, we make sure we keep our kids safe. But Chairman Collins, we are going to have a committee meeting. You will be first on that agenda, and we will not be taking testimony at that one. It will just be any changes we need to make.
I certainly appreciate the willingness of this committee to help move this bill forward, and I appreciate your willingness to work with me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. All right, we got to move forward. We're going to move fairly quickly. Senator Rick Williams, right here, Senate Bill 418. I think this is going to be a pretty quick and easy one. We do have an amendment that we'll talk about. Why don't you go ahead and present your bill from where you're sitting, if you like.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. What this is doing, and I've spoken with Terry Norris and the Georgia Sheriff's Association, Jessica Rott with Prosecuting Attorneys Council. There's more and more being brought forward alert and acknowledging animal abuse, dog fighting, cockfighting, that kind of stuff here in the state of Georgia. But then I've had some incidences where law enforcement officers didn't actually recognize animal abuse as it was occurring. And this is just requiring a 2-hour course. I think Jessica Rock could come talk about that course being intertwined with post-certification of law enforcement officers so that they can recognize what animal abuse really is. And I just
And-
like to turn over to
Yes,
the
absolutely.
professional.
Mr. Chairman, Jessica, 30 seconds or less. I think this is a pretty straightforward one.
I can do it.
Talk us
I
out of
can
it.
do it. Mr. Chairman, committee members, as always, thank you very much for having me. Senator Williams, thank you so much for bringing this bill to the committee. The long and short of this is just, I'm not going to throw a whole lot of statistics at you, but these are ones that are tried and true. Doesn't matter how many times you look at this, we talk about this issue. About 50% of calls for a patrol officer are domestic violence related. Pet abuse is one of the four most significant risk factors of somebody later becoming a domestic violence abuser. About 85% of pet-owning women, 63% of pet-owning children are reporting some type of harm or threat of harm to their pet when they are entering domestic violence shelters. About 76% of animal abuse incidents are occurring in front of children. And when it comes to animal sexual abuse, unfortunately, we know it's the single largest risk factor and strongest predictor of somebody later sexually abusing a child. Most of our major dogfighting cases that, especially the ones that I've been involved in federally, have stemmed from drug trafficking, DEA wire cases. In addition to the significant connection
Jessica, you're talking us out of it.
we're seeing.
You're
okay.
losing votes.
I'll just say this: it says recognition of animal abuse, but what I'll say is it's not just about that. It's about identifying the link between animal abuse and human violence, and how knowing these crimes can also help them investigate other crimes as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm going to ask Chairman Harper if he would come up just for a moment here. In addition to helping out with this bill, Commissioner Harper, he chaired this committee for many years, so it's actually in deference to that. We'll give him his commissioner title back. But Chairman Robertson actually has been working with him as well, and I believe that Senator Williams agrees. There's a friendly amendment here to make sure that as these very things are happening, today the Department of Agriculture has a law enforcement unit that covers Title IV, Title 10, Title 26, Title 43. The only one they don't have is 16. This is obviously our most critical source for food, clothing, everything else we have. I think that's a very simple and very appropriate amendment to add to this. Chairman, or sorry, I called you Chairman again. Commissioner Harper.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you're all right. It's great to be back at my old home, and it's good to be amongst friends, and I appreciate all of you. Really briefly, I'm going to do the same thing. I think this is an appropriate area. The Department of Agriculture, we're tasked with the welfare of agriculture and animals in this state, and part of the welfare of that is ensuring that our animals are protected. And we've built a strong relationship with the Prosecuting Attorneys Council and Jessica Rock and the work that she's doing in animal abuse. And this is just clarifying the law that our law enforcement officers have the ability to go after those criminal crimes. Animal abuse is part of that. And so we would appreciate the committee's favorable consideration. We've been working with our local and federal and state partners to address these issues as an agency, and we look forward to those significant partnerships moving forward. But this is just clarifying the law that our agency has the ability to work on those cases and address those cases. And Mr. Chairman, we'd appreciate y'all's favorable consideration on that. Do you?
Okay, we did not get a copy printed of this. Would you just pass this down? It simply adds 16 in one level. It's probably the smallest amendment. You see the language around it, but it's simply adding 16. So let's make sure everybody's comfortable with that. I know that Chairman Williams has already seen that. Obviously, Chairman Robertson has been working on it some time with Commissioner Harper.
Well, I want to thank both of y'all, Chairman Robertson, Chairman Albers, Senator Williams. We have been working on this for quite some time, along with the prosecutors, to ensure that the law is clear and what our authority is, and ensuring that we're able to effectuate those cases. And it's a liability issue for our officers at the Department of Agriculture. I think the clarity in the law is needed, and we'd appreciate your support in helping make that happen.
Okay, from what I understand, what this does is it allows your law enforcement officers to go take out a warrant.
That's correct.
When some sheriff somewhere might not want to take out the warrant.
There's that possibility, or it helps take that load off of those local law enforcement officers as well.
And it also could help,
Yes, sir.
right, help the sheriff.
Yep.
At that, you're not having to go through another step, that you
That's
can go
correct.
ahead and move quickly
Yep.
and get the warrant to prosecute that.
Yes, sir. And to be really clear, Commissioner Harper and I talked about this. Commissioner Harper's team, and I think there's 4 of them, they investigate unique cases. We were talking yesterday about a cattle rustling case.
Yep.
He's doing all these very unique cases that are related to livestock primarily, and sometimes these cases have to be handled quickly. These animals are transported, mistreated, and other things. And all this does is allow his officers to initiate law enforcement procedures under Title 16 and handle those cases.
And-
they are not going to be riding around with blue lights pulling cars over. They can do that already.
And to your point, since this is in Title II, it's related to cases, the ag nexus, right? And all of those statutes related to cattle theft, pecan theft, animal abuse, those cases are in Title 16. And so this clarifies that our law enforcement has that authority and ensures that we're able to address those issues in a court of law.
All right, very good. Thank you for your testimony, Commissioners.
Mr.
Always love
Chairman.
to have you back here at your former committee.
Glad to be back.
All right. What's the will of the committee? We'll do a motion first, and then we'll do an amendment. All right. So I got a motion from,
Motion do pass.
all right. I got a second from Senator Payne. Now, would anybody like to offer an amendment? I don't think we have to read the whole thing, but
Right.
we've passed this around. It's pretty straightforward. Just with the amendment.
I would, Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer the amendment as written and reviewed by the committee relating to Title II of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, granting the Title 16 responsibilities to the commissioner in his office in Department of Ag.
Do I have a second? Second from Senator Payne. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Passed unanimously. All right, we have a new committee sub as amended by the committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Passed unanimously. Congratulations. Best of luck in the Rules Committee. And we're moving on. We're going to try and get through some stuff pretty quick here, but it's important, so I want to make sure we're very methodical. Thank you for waiting so long. Chairman Setzler, would you mind come on down? Okay. All right. Okay. Senate Bill 470. This is a really important law right now that we have been working on. I want to thank Chairman Setzler for his leadership as well as the work he has been doing with our sheriff's organizations back there. I see Ms. Terry Norris and Mike to help us out. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, proud to bring before you today Senate Bill 470 and an amendment that's going to make some tweaks to this that as we work through this process, we think can perfect this bill. What this brings to bear, what brings this to us today is this issue of what's commonly referred to as squatters. You know, people who, many of whom are not just, you know, your garden variety, penniless people looking for a shelter. Many of them are professional or near professional actors that move into people's homes, take them over, and know how to work the law to not get out. In many cases, a criminal trespass can be proven at some point, but procedurally they're weaponizing the civil system to keep themselves in the home by claiming that they're really a valid tenant, trying to assert a sort of a tenant-landlord relationship and using the delicacy with which we treat eviction laws. I think we should. If someone's a tenant, we have some laws that have protected tenants from getting evicted, and there's delicacy there should be. But in essence, people are weaponizing the kindness that we do show in our eviction laws to take advantage of people who are landlords and stay in these homes and honestly just wantonly violate property rights. What this bill does not create a new criminal penalty. What it does, though, it creates a procedural circumstance which gives a landlord an opportunity, whether it's a single home they own or whether it's a multifamily complex they own, if they proactively go and file with the Superior Court clerk in their county a petition. It's we're going to refer to it as a notice of vacancy. If they file that notice of vacancy proactively, and then someone does move into the unit later, it's, law enforcement can remove them immediately. In essence, what you're doing, it is for your rental unit, what might be akin to like a rental freeze on your, or a credit freeze on your credit. You can't open up a new credit card in Senator Jackson's name because she took the proactive action to put a freeze on her credit. It allows you to go in and say, from this date certain or until it's removed, there will be nobody in this unit. If anyone's in there, they're doing it unlawfully, and law enforcement then has permission to move them immediately. What we've got in the amendments is some language that fleshes out some of the details. This was worked in hand with law enforcement, but again, as we're back and forth in this process of trying to perfect the bill, they came back with some additions, which I'm glad to offer here to create that balance. But what this does not create a new crime, but creates a procedural circumstance that if a landlord is proactive and says, my unit will be a vacant unit, then if someone occupies it, they are removed. They can certainly assert their right later, but they will do it from the context of being outside the unit, not from having what they call squatters' rights and being inside the unit. There's a couple of protections we put in place here, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to walk through those if this is the proper time.
Perfect. We do, first off, I want to thank you, Chairman Setzer, for working with both Terry and Mike with the Georgia Sheriff's Association, who are back there. And they're going to give me another wave saying that they support this, and this is helping getting them comfortable in the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We worked with the chairman and the author, and thanks for the amended language.
Thank you so much. All right, so what you've got in your folder says Amendment to Senate Bill 470, page 2 of 3. And if you just take it through this amendment, I think it's pretty straightforward, but let's make sure everybody understands it.
Yes, sir. And again, Legislative Council was down this morning for a while, so I sat down with one of the attorneys, we fleshed out language, and I produced this myself for you guys, so we wouldn't, otherwise we could have a complete committee substitute. And I also believe if you prepare it on the bill, this shows a point-for-point changes what we made. And I think there's some value to doing that. One thing that, before we go into this, Mr. Chairman, I will say is, what protections are in this for this not to be abused? We're trying to create a shield here and not a sword. And what we have in place is that if a person is going to file this notice of vacancy for their property, they have to file a sworn statement, through a notary or attorney in fact, or before the court clerk themselves. So if they make that sworn statement that the unit is not occupied, and they have to define it is not currently occupied. If it is occupied, then it's a false sworn statement, which we know is a felony 1 to 5. So there's felony overhang by trying to abuse this. So we think that's a pretty good incentive for folks not to try to abuse this process and turn it into a sword. But with that having been said, Mr. Chairman, again, a person either by himself or again they can have an agent, an attorney. In fact, you can have a property management company that's empowered to do this for you as an owner. But they file this notice. There's no changes we're proposing on the first page. The second page on line 22 is where you see the first proposed language changed. And the issue was raised. This was initially drawn to say you file it to a date certain. What we wanted to change was to say date certain or until an earlier date in which such notice of vacancy is withdrawn by the affiant. That's the one who affirms that this is the case. So if you say you want to have this thing vacant through June 20th and someone shows up and can rent your property on May 1st, you can come in before that and say, hey, I don't want it to go through June 20th. Like I said, I wanted to be able to move someone in on May. You can come in and shorten the time period if you want to. The affiant can do that, as would be expected. I'd like, before I talk the second piece, where you see amend by adding on line 23, if you guys can see down below in quotes, which have the force, I want members, pull your pen out. I don't want you to insert a word here. It says which have, it should say which shall have. If you can add that at the pleasure of the chair, I'd like to. That was just a Scrivener's error we made.
So you just want to make sure we're clear. You're on the second part of your amendment.
Second part of my amendment.
And,
said amend by adding to line 23 after the words notice of vacancy the following, quote, it says which have the force and effect of the lawful order. We wanted to say which shall have the force and effect of the lawful order.
All right, let's continue on.
Okay. Line 25, again, it says amend by striking tenant, and here's a personal property or both from the premises. This language was originally pulled from the eviction law. And in working with law enforcement, I completely agreed. I was a little uncertain whether they ought to be involved in the removing of the property. What we've got here is law enforcement will be responsible to remove the people, the persons from the unit. It will be the landlord's responsibility to remove the property. So if squatters move in, they set up house. If when they're removed, of course, by law enforcement or told to leave, they of course carry with them whatever they want, but they leave things behind. It's not law enforcement's problem. It is the landlord's job, and he follows that normal process of carrying it out of the house and putting it on the street corner. And it's, at that point, follows the exact language of our eviction law.
All right, perfect.
Okay. Also in line 25, and again, this person or persons from the premises using, what we have here is, as we raise this, I believed it to be implicit, but one thing law enforcement raised is make sure we have clear statutory authority for forced entry. A lot of times, they won't open the door. The only way to get in is after you've knocked, you rung the doorbell. We've got circumstances of squatters who kind of know the rules. They won't answer the door because they know under our current circumstance, there's not a warrant to go in and open the door and get them out of there. So experienced squatters don't come to the door and law enforcement knocks on the door. They look at them and they go about their business. This says because we have said with this notice of vacancy in place, if they're in the home, they don't belong there, law enforcement can remove them. We give law enforcement the statutory authority to use forced entry, but of course only necessary force. That whole progressive response, they've got a duty to step that up only as they need to. Okay?
All right.
Clarify that for law enforcement. Line 26, this is where we say it shall be the responsibility of the landlord to pay the repair cost of any real property damage caused by law enforcement in the reasonable performance of their duties. If law enforcement's got to take the door down or go in, take it off its hinges, go in, the law enforcement agency can't be charged for that. It's the landlord's responsibility. Doesn't take away the landlord's ability to pursue some action against the squatter, but ultimately, landlord's got to be prepared to bear that cost. That's something law enforcement asks for as well.
All right.
Okay. And also the cost of the moving personal property. The second page goes, page 3 of 3, if you turn the page over. A couple things here we addressed. I wanted certainty on this as well. I didn't want this to become a profit center for local governments. So we just said, if you file this, or if you change it or remove it, any action you go to the courthouse to do, it's $10. It's fair. It's on the modest side, but we thought that was a fair thing to do. If apartment complexes start doing this as a routine matter of practice, I don't want to have rents going up to our constituents because every time you do this, a county charges you $100 to do it. This can get passed right on to the rent payer, and we're struggling. There's not much we can do to affect rents, Mr. Chairman. This is one thing we can do. And then again, I say here, to accomplish the valid purpose of protecting privately owned properties from unlawful occupancy, any information relating to the property is one which the notice of vacancy has been filed, it's not subject to open records. One of the real concerns the realtors brought to me, they didn't want this to become a de facto honeypot of all the rental homes that sometimes aren't carefully supervised to attract, that this becomes something that attracts bad actors to it. So for this limited purpose, we're saying this is not subject to open records, and we also, this section 2 below it just puts that in the Open Records Act as well. So.
Very good. This is very comprehensive. I appreciate this has been a very thorough bill. And again, thank you for working with all the stakeholders. Are there questions from the committee members? Would somebody like to, before we get to that, we'll take a motion on the bill, then we'll talk about the amendment. Got a motion to pass from Senator Jackson. I've got a second from Senator Jones. Now, would somebody like to offer the amendment as proposed, including the word shall between which and have on the line 23 amendment? Would somebody like to offer that as an amendment? So moved by Senator Jackson again, second again from Senator Jones. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We now have a brand-new committee substitute after our amendment.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to talk past the close here, but I do want to raise this. I'll leave it to the will of the committee. It was brought to me very late in the game, but I appreciate the thinking. Law enforcement asked if, and again, strictly speaking, law enforcement following their normal ordinary standard of care and reasonableness there's no need to put this in, but as a belt and suspenders, it was asked if the following could be added, and I could share this with the committee.
Okay, and this will be section 3? Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
Yep. The language would say, it would add at the very end, end of section 1, if any sheriff, constable, or marshal, or any peace officer who or any law enforcement agency that acts in good faith in compliance with the provisions of this code section. So, good faith, reasonableness standard, shall be immune from civil or criminal liability for his or her actions in connection with the enforcement of a notice of vacancy. You know, I think strictly speaking under law, a reasonableness standard, acting in good faith, that's the standard they have now. I don't know if this is essential, but I want to just throw that out there. It was raised to me, would that create a level of comfort from law enforcement? They're not going to be exposing themselves in any new way by enforcing this, and that just maybe a belt and suspenders that may not be needed but could have meaning,
You have
symbolic
a quick
value.
question, Senator, from Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So since we're belt and suspendering here, how do we prevent regular constituents from getting scammed in this situation? So, for instance, you own a property, you tell the court that it's supposed to be vacant, but then you go ahead and rent it out without ever lifting up that statement, and then you go to the local sheriff and say, hey, I know I took these people's down deposit and 2 months rents in advance, but they're not supposed to be here because I told y'all this was supposed to be vacant. How do we keep people from being scammed in that way on that side of it?
Well, I mean, I think that's certainly an example of a fraud statute, and I think somebody, when you have, as an affiant, gone in with a sworn statement saying this is vacant, it's going to be vacant for time, date certain, I mean, you have put yourself very much on the screen of the legal system. I think not to say it couldn't happen, but they've got they have the first noose to hang you with when you filed this thing. You bring someone in, you offer them a subsequent lease, and this is already in place. Exhibit A, Counselor, is you sign this affidavit. Exhibit B, this lease you signed at a later date, and then you're trying to use this to, I think you've built the perfect case to convict a bad actor. I don't know that they do that. I mean, we can't think of every circumstance. We may be back here in a year thinking, hey, they've got around this somehow, but we've tried to think that through.
Okay.
All right, that's a fairly long amendment, and we don't have copies of
Yeah.
that.
I don't know that we need it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, why don't we
That
look
may
at
be
something on the Senate floor? Maybe that might
Could
be
be.
something appropriate to
Yes, sir.
work with our friends in the back.
And I think with the Ledge Council, I've not taken this past them it is taken from an existing code section. But if it makes sense to do it, I'm open to it. I just want there to be consensus around that.
Absolutely. I'm going to recognize our legislative council because we need to do a second amendment to clean up the order of where things are going to be with the First Amendment.
Yes,
So,
Mr.
go ahead.
Chairman.
Would you take the microphone for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you all hear me? I'm not used to this. Okay, I did not draft this piece of legislation, nor did I draft the amendment, but and I'm just now seeing it now, but from what I can see, it does appear that we're adding a new section. Is that correct?
New code section. Yes,
Right,
ma'am.
which means that, well, you're adding, yes, another code section
Well,
by implication of that section 2.
No.
Which makes the repealer section 3.
No. Everything you're seeing in the language on the amendment ties to the base bill, which is creating a new code section. 441134 is a new code section. Everything we're doing in this amendment just grafts into the language in this new code section we're creating. Section 2 simply goes to, that is an amendment to the existing code section 501872.
Yes, sir.
Just sticking to the bottom of subsection A, that
Yes, sir, I
paragraph 51.
understand. Yes,
Okay.
sir, as I understand it, but what we would need to do is amend LC 560097 to have a new section within the bill to basically implicate that.
Yes, ma'am, it would be. So
So that's what I'm
you'd be bumping down, section 2 in the existing bill becomes section 3.
Yes, sir, absolutely, yes.
So
And
section 2
3
becomes 3, and then you're going to have to add that to the top.
Yes, sir. We
caption.
would also have to add language in the title to accommodate for the Title 50 amendment.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have an amendment to make those two what will just be pro forma changes now? I have it from Senator Robertson. I've got a second from Senator Jones. Any further discussion on Amendment 2? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All right, Amendment 2 is now adopted. Now we have the full bill. Do I have a motion for the full bill as we've amended it? I got a motion rather from Senator Jones. I have a second from Senator Robertson. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. Passed unanimously. Best wishes in the Rules Committee. Thank you so
committee.
much.
Appreciate
All
you
right.
guys.
All right, we have been waiting a long time for our friends at the Insurance and Safety Fire Commission. They have their annual department bill. This is Senate Bill 417. While it looks like a big bill that I'm carrying, it's actually fairly simple and straightforward. And I'm going to ask them to come down and help present their department bill, and I'm going to ask them to do that expeditiously and not talk us out of it. This is fairly straightforward updates. They're going to talk to you about updating how we're monitoring everything from fireworks to boilers and elevators and things of that nature. So please start off by introducing yourselves for everyone watching back home.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tony Pritchett. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Safety Fire under Commissioner John King. So what we've brought to you today is the language that we wish to change. A lot of it is cleanup language in the bill. There are some things there that are new. But to keep brief, I'm going to give, a synopsis of each area. Number one, we're looking to do updates in the elevators and boilers section. And what this will do is it changes the reporting element of that to make it easier for reporting incidents that happen when it comes to elevators because of technology advancements on our side. Also, we are looking to clarify what exemptions may be under there under certain kinds of boilers and changing that inspection schedule to biannually instead of triannually, so it coincides with other inspections they would have from our office as well, eliminating the need for extra inspections. Our second area is in fireworks safety. What we're aiming to do here is there is some cleanup and further clarification in this language. In choosing to do this, we have more clearly clarified what a public display is or a private display, so it's more clear for those who enforce those things and those who want to use fireworks to know how to use them and be within the law. Something else that we're adding in there, we do have those in a lot of settings that want to weaponize fireworks against public safety and a lot of the civil uprising situations that we've seen. So we put a provision in there that does make a criminal charge for that would make those liable for using fireworks against law enforcement and other members of public safety. And that penalty would be the same thing as criminal damage to property in second degree.
Got a question from Senator Payne.
So that makes it liable for only on public safety, against public safety using fireworks?
Well, there's an additional thing in there as well for just anybody that's injured or property damage for fireworks, but there's one specifically for those devices being used against firefighters, police officers, EMTs, and anybody in public safety.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Any more you want to continue to take us through here on the boilers and elevators?
Yes, under boiler inspections, this is pretty simple. What we're asking is to add the language for National Board NB 80 to the language. It's a national certification that if somebody has that, we can get them to work more quickly without having to wait a 3-year process of experience. If they can demonstrate that proficiency, we can get them to work much quicker than we can now. So it's a hiring and getting them to work quicker solution that we have in that area. The last thing we have is public employee hazardous protection. Basically now MSDS sheets, material safety data sheets that talk about hazardous materials. In the law, it says that stuff has to come to our office. All we're asking is that change says that they're required to have it, but they do maintain it on site instead of the state having to maintain that with us.
Perfect. I want to thank Ethan Stiles with your office, who's been a tremendous partner and no stranger to our Senate here for helping get this compiled in this legislation work with the Legislative Council. I want to just bring to the committee's attention that we are working off of LC 394138. However, the original bill that we got, the 0102 copy, for some reason we have lost in the shuffle that version. So when we do a motion on this bill, I'm going to ask that we amend it with this entire LC to make sure we have the proper one in there with lack of an 01 or 02, because I don't want us to have incorrect numbers. So I just want to make the committee members aware of that. Are there questions from the committee members? All right, seeing none, what's the will of the committee? Motion to pass from Senator Robertson. I got a second from Senator Jones, and now would somebody offer the amendment for the updated LC?
I would offer that amendment with the LC.
All right, so Senator Robertson is offering an amendment that we are going to completely sub that bill out with LC 394138 from the original. Is there a second? Second from Senator Jones. I beat you to it. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. All right, passes unanimously, and now we are back up to the bill as it has been amended by the committee. We'll do call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. Passes unanimously. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate you staying a little late as we've gone through a lot of important bills today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
Senator Moore, we're glad to have you back here. You bring any wisdom, discernment to our committee today?
Well, I brought someone, his name is Isaac, and his dream job is to be a Georgia State Trooper.
All right.
Public safety is the last meeting of the day, so I wanted to introduce him to you two, if that's okay.
Of course, Isaac, we are thrilled to have you. Come on down here for a moment. We look forward to having you as a member of the Georgia State Patrol. What grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
Senior, all right. Well, let's make sure we get him with Colonel Hitchens and start getting you through the process. We're really proud of you for stepping up, and thank you, Senator Moore, for bringing him here today.
Yes, sir.
All right, look forward to giving you a salute in the near future. I love your bow tie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
If you need a good reference, get with Senator Moore, and he'll give you my contact information.
It's a tough crowd. All right. Thank you for being so patient. This is going to be our final, and I think a pretty easy bill, Senate Resolution 570. Chairman Robertson, you want to present from right there, please?
Yes, sir, if you don't mind. It's SR 570. All this does is create a Senate supporting safety and welfare of all individuals in the Georgia Department of Corrections. Just want to study DOC and see what ways we can do to help them.
I think that's an excellent idea. Questions to the committee members? Got a motion from Senator Payne. I've got a second from Senator Jones. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations, best of luck, and rules. Thank you for the last two people that are here. This meeting is hereby adjourned.